In May of 2019 in Johannesburg, South Africa, the Baseball Africa Cup took place. The host country breezed through the event, winning all 5 games they played, including a 27-0 rout of Uganda in the finals. I was disappointed when I saw that score. I was hoping, and still am, that another country in Africa would rise up and challenge South Africa's dominance, but they're so far ahead of the rest of the continent that lopsided results like this are no surprise. Knowing that, you might be a bit confused by the title of this video. After all, South Africa is no powerhouse in the world. How is a country that gets clobbered by them supposed to become one? Well, it's not so much where they are, but where they're headed. Baseball has been played in South Africa for over 100 years, while the origins of Ugandan baseball only go back to 2002. So the first crop of athletes to have grown up with the game are just now starting to reach adulthood. So of course South Africa is still way ahead. But in that short time since baseball was introduced, Uganda has established itself as the dominant number 2 team in Africa. In Zone East qualifying for the Africa Cup, they beat Tanzania 23-1 and shut out Kenya 12-0 in the final. In the Africa Cup, they beat everyone they faced except for South Africa. In the semifinals, they stomped Zimbabwe 21-5. So they are without a doubt the second best team in Africa, and no one is really challenging them for that spot. Quite an accomplishment in just 18 years' time, especially when you're starting from scratch. Besides a long history of playing baseball, another big advantage South Africa has had is money. With a GDP approximately 10 times greater than Uganda's, South Africa has been able to buy equipment and build facilities that other African nations can only dream of. But as we've seen in certain Latin American countries, you don't need to be rich to be good at baseball. If the talent is there, the money and necessary equipment will come in from abroad. This is already happening in Uganda. Major League Baseball and Wilson Sporting Goods have been donating equipment. The National Friendship Stadium, the country's first baseball-specific stadium, funded by the Embassy of Japan in Uganda, was built in 2014. Other parts of Africa have seen similar contributions, but not on the scale that Uganda has seen. Another advantage that South Africa has had over the years is migration between their country and the United States and other baseball-playing countries. It's very common for families to move between the countries, bringing their baseball skills and experience with them. As for Uganda, the migration is pretty one-sided, mostly Ugandans moving to the U.S. and never returning. But now there are MLB scouts from the U.S. working in Uganda. Head coach for the national team is Katsuhisa Tanaka of Japan. A few of Uganda's players have gone to Japan to receive some training and instruction. Several more have been going to MLB camps in the U.S., more than from any other country in Africa. After hearing all that, you might still not be convinced that Uganda will pass South Africa as the dominant team on the continent. Never mind being a world powerhouse like I suggested in the video's title. But don't click away just yet. Keep listening. The biggest reason to believe in the future of Ugandan baseball is that they are already leading the continent and competing with some of the world's best in youth baseball. In 2012, Uganda became the first country from Africa ever to qualify for the Little League World Series, where they lost to Panama and Mexico, but picked up a win against a team from Oregon in a crossover game. In 2015, they returned to the Little League World Series. This time they shocked everyone by beating Dominican Republic in the quarterfinals, before dropping consecutive games to Venezuela and Chinese Taipei. This was the only team from the Europe and Africa region to reach Round 2 of the Little League World Series in the last 7 years. In more recent years, other youth teams from Uganda have made trips to the U.S., training with and competing against American teams. The Ugandan players lack the polished skills of the American players. Fielding errors are more common. Their pitchers throw a limited variety of pitches. The hitters aren't used to seeing certain pitches, resulting in some big swing and miss moments. But the Ugandan teams impress with their power, speed, and athleticism. Their pitchers throw fastballs in the high 70s. Their hitters can really swing. They just need to do a better job of locating the ball. So the talent is there, they just need better instruction. It's important to remember that Ugandan baseball has gotten where it is today with very little help from outside of their country. Their skills have largely developed from just playing against each other. Now that they're getting more experience in the baseball world, those skills are going to develop to an extent far greater than what we see from them now. Now, getting the proper training and equipment will certainly help, but it's not necessarily enough to lift a country's baseball program to the highest level. After all, if that were the case, South Africa would already be one of the top baseball countries in the world. But Uganda will have something that South Africans never really had for the game: enthusiasm. They don't really need baseball in South Africa. They have the world's top-ranked rugby team and a top 5 cricket team. Baseball is just one of a number of sports popular with a minority of athletes and sports fans within the country. When Gift Ngope became the first player from the country to reach the major league level, it was a big deal for the baseball community there, but not so much for the rest of the country. Uganda, on the other hand, is ranked 34th in the world in cricket, 40th in rugby, 77th in soccer. They didn't win a single medal at the last Summer Olympic Games. They are still looking for a sport where they can call themselves one of the world's best. so an appearance in the WBC would be a very big deal for this country, and the first Ugandan to reach the big league level in MLB will be an inspiration to thousands of young Ugandan athletes to take up the game and strive to reach the major league level themselves. So, do you think Uganda can become the Dominican Republic of Africa, or do you think we're being too optimistic about their future? Where do you think they'll end up? As a strong competitor for Caribbean and East Asian countries, or a continued punching bag for South Africa? Or maybe somewhere in between? Let us know in the comments. That's all for today, and until next time, this is Baseball International. See ya.